Hey guys, TheVerveNerd here, and today I want to showcase a game called Reus from Abbey Games. And this is a world builder slash strategy slash god type game. Let me explain a little bit more about that in detail as we go ahead and start this game. So basically, the premise of the game is that you control one of several giants, which are like demigods. And these demigods have different biome powers. Like there's a ocean demigod giant that can make oceans. There's a rock one that can make mountains, etc., etc. So the game is built around that, where you basically just terraform the world and try to get people to colonize your world, essentially, and reach certain goals by doing so, which you can do in the era game mode. For demonstration purposes, however, I'm going to just do free play, which emphasizes experimenting. And experimenting is really a big part of this game because there is a mechanic called symbiosis, which I'll be getting into very shortly, which really affects where you can put different things for the maximum effect, so to speak. And maximum effect is important so your civilization can thrive, essentially. Alright, so here we loaded into the game, and we have our planet, which is inhospitably barren, I must say. Except for this unique detail of these giants that I aforementioned earlier. Now, to kind of give you an example of these giants' powers, let's go ahead and click on our ocean giant here. And let's create an ocean, which, as I mentioned, each of these giants can create a biome specific to what kind of giant they are. As you might imagine, this one can make oceans, this one can make swamps, this one mountains, and this one forests. Now, it is important to note that some biomes cannot exist without the presence of other biomes. So, for instance, you could not make a forest unless you had an ocean, because, of course, trees take water to survive, right? In the same fashion, you can make mountains without anything else. And when you make mountains, you also create deserts, which you will see here shortly. These guys do move rather slowly, which is kind of a bummer, but you can... some of these monsters... I don't know if I want to say monsters. Giants? Demigods? Some of these demigods have powers that can boost other demigods' speeds, so if you're like in a real hurry or something, you can go ahead and do that. As you can see, they all have action bars down at the bottom, and these action bars give them different abilities. Their main ability, of course, is to create the biomes, but there are, of course, alternate other abilities as well, which essentially let them function very independently and very unique from one another. For instance, if I wanted to create life on this planet, which is important to get settlements going, of course, and essentially humanity started, I could only make it from two of these demigods. I cannot make life, animals, should I say. I should be specific. I cannot make animal life from the rock giant or the tree giant. I can only make animal life from the water giant or the swamp giant. And even then, it breaks down into more specifics. The water giant specifically can make domestic animals, and the swamp giant can specifically make exotic animals. And the difference between the two is domestic animals, essentially, are there for food purposes, whereas exotic animals are there for wealth purposes. And if that doesn't make sense to you, it's understandable, but the game does throw in some mechanics like that just to basically go along. Now, you will notice that in the upper left-hand corner, you've got a progress bar, it looks like, with several icons underneath of it. This would normally be how much time has elapsed in your world. So if you were in era mode, for instance, and you set your timer for 60 minutes, this would count down throughout that period. So it kind of just keeps track of how far along you are in the cycle. Now, since this is a sandbox mode that I'm in currently, that isn't really an issue. But you will notice this guy that could be mistaken for Jesus with his little mule there in the upper left-hand corner. He's got a little aura around him. Now, this means that there is a settler roaming the world looking for habitation, essentially. Currently, nothing that I have made on this world is habitable because there's not a food source within a usable biome. I have made a food source in the water here, as you can see, but that is no good because humanity cannot make homes under the water, obviously, right? So this land here is barren, so humanity cannot colonize that yet. So it's really not viable at this point in time for the colonizer to settle down and create a town. Which is fine, because I don't really want to get into that yet. I want to kind of get into a little bit more about these giants' abilities before we do that. So let's kind of group these guys up together. And let's use my forest giant to activate an ability called Fertility Boost, which I will cast on this tile here. This game is tile-based. It may not look like it, but every highlighted thing that you see here, section, is actually a certain tile. So it's very misleading, I guess you could say, because it really it's very fluid in how it's designed. I rather appreciate the effort the designers put into this game to make it seem more fluid and more easier, I guess I should say, than what it really is, because it's really actually a very complex game. And this is where the strategic element of the game comes in, because you can click on a tile that I created. As you might remember, I made some domesticated animals here earlier, and you see these food bars pop up. This is essentially the feeding range of the animal that I created. I created a mackerel, which it's predetermined what kind of animal you create when you start, depending on the biome. So that's something to keep in the back of your head. It's like, for instance, if I were to create a domestic animal in a forest, it would not be a mackerel, obviously. It would be a chicken in this game. I'm not sure about the design decision to make the default animal a chicken, as, you know, opposed to anything else, or for instance a mackerel as opposed to anything else, but that's how it is. So we're just gonna have to live with it, accept it, and move on, right? So anyway, each animal that you make has a feeding range. As you can see, I'm gonna plop down another domesticated animal spot here, and let me make it within the feeding range of this mackerel, and I'll show you what happens, and I'll tell you why. All right. You see here that the range has expanded, as well as the numbers have increased here. These icons, I should say, these apples, are actually your food meter in this game. There are several meters. There's a food meter, there's a research meter, there is a wealth meter, and I'm probably missing one. I think there's a fertility meter, and let's see, there's several meters to keep track of, but this increased because I was able to synergize this mackerel school with this one. So as you can see, everything in this game has symbiosis. So this symbiosis for the mackerel says massive school, which gives it a +1 to the animal range for each other mackerel within animal range, which can stack up to 3 times. So since I put another animal plot down within this animal plot's radius, it essentially increased my range all the further. So let's go ahead and put down another one, since it can stack up to 3 times, and I'll show you what that does again. See, that increased it all the way across. So, and I'm getting like increased food because these 3 overlap, right? Essentially, that's why there are 6s above this one here, and these are 4s here, and then there's just 2s on the outskirts, because I have overlapping schools. So I'm getting more food here than I would on the outskirts, simply because of logical reasoning. All right, So that kind of explains symbiosis here. That doesn't just take effect with animals or domestic animals. That would also take effect, say, if let me create a forest biome here. This should probably draw people to the world when I do this, because they will now have a habitable spot to live. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna make my forests. Bam. Alright. Alright, so we've created a forest biome. And as you can see, my traveler has quickly realized, hey, this is viable to settle on. So it's now settled. Now, since my world is now habitable, I now have humans on the world that have different needs and desires and goals that need to be fulfilled. I do not have direct control of these, however. That is kind of a caveat. But they will help me if I help them. And when I say that, I mean these things right here, these projects, which shows up in the left-hand corner of your screen. You can select between villages and projects if you like. So these projects that the villagers do start on their own. You have no control over when they start or not. Usually they start up whenever you make a town or whenever your town progresses to a certain extent. These projects, when completed, will give somebody called an ambassador to you. Now, this ambassador will unlock other aspects of your giants. So as you can see, my giants do have locked aspects at the moment that would basically make things a little bit more complex, give my giants more abilities, so to speak. Alright, so it's in my best interest to try to complete these projects so I can essentially snowball out of control and just keep getting better things and do better things for the community and for the world in general, right? And it's important that you do so because the game's main goal, purpose, is to complete these mini objectives, which also unlock different things as the game progresses. So we will probably come across some stuff in this game that's locked because I haven't progressed. In the grand scheme of things, I haven't unlocked that many things yet. So, ideally, the world's not going to be optimized like necessarily the way I want it to. I know that sounds confusing, but this game really has a lot of depth to it, and there are so many combinations and things to unlock in this game that there would be no way that I could just sit here and just describe them to you. I would have to be playing this game for a very long time to be able to even qualify to give you an opinion on that. So let's just start with the basics. Let's start with this school here that this village has created as a project. Alright, this school wants me to use 15 technology and food in order to succeed. And I can do that as long as I'm within the village's range here. And you can determine the village's range by clicking on the village itself and seeing the little pink bar that extends, not unlike the bar here for the mackerel school or whatever. So, within this range, we're going to have to use technology and food to create this structure. Now, this thing is timed. It's not just going to be there forever for you to accomplish. You do have to meet these requirements within a certain amount of time, which shows up once you click on the item, and it shows up in the upper right-hand corner. As you can see, it's already starting to tick down here. So, we do have to get these done in a timely manner. It's not just something you can sit there and just let happen. So let's go ahead and pop down some herbs, which essentially give me tech, which will help increase my technology here. So as long as we do that within the village radius, we will be okay. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to use my swamp guy to go ahead and do that. And as you can see, I've created tech already. All right, now, as I mentioned earlier, there are synergies and symbioses, I guess plural, symbioses between different things. This does not just include mammals or animals. This also includes plants and herbs and everything else. And for instance, with my rock giant, it would include minerals. So everything is symbiotic, which makes sense because that's how the world really works, right? So it's very elegant, yet very deep. And I really, really appreciate that. I love the atmosphere. I love a lot about this game, I'm not going to lie. So let's get into it a little bit here. All right, the symbiosis for this herb is to plant it next to another plant. That's simple enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves some food now, since we gave us some technology. So let's plant down another plant to the right here. Or maybe we can make it to... Let's put it to the left instead. That's kind of arbitrary, but that's what I'm going to do. All right. So, as you can see, that jumped up from 4 to 19 because I have a symbiotic relationship. So, my research and my food have now skyrocketed, and I now have almost all the requirements met here. One thing to note that I should bring to your attention is once the requirements are met, it's not just going to instantly give me these things. It's an over time kind of thing. So, and I'm not even sure my village is within the bounds of that. So I probably should have made this blueberry bush to the right of it, which I think I'm going to go ahead and do. I kind of messed up there, I'll be honest with you. It's easy to do, because there's so many factors to try to figure in this game. Now, the village's radius will eventually grow, and I will eventually pick up that 19 food. But for the time being, I really want to demonstrate, you know, what happens whenever you get these projects complete, because just telling you isn't necessarily enough. So I think what I'm going to do is wait for that to recharge. There are recharge times, so you can't just go willy-nilly on whatever you want. Alright, I'm going to put another blueberry bush right next to it. And then that will generate the food that I need. So as you can see, I have 3 of 17 and 5 of 13, and it is slowly increasing, you may notice. As well as my village's influence. You see my village just increased in influence and now picked up this bush, which increased it to 36. So you see how it can easily start snowballing out of control. And it really requires quite a bit of micromanagement. And it's really cool that there is a pause function in the game, since everything's in real time. So you can just pause things whenever you need to and issue orders through each of your giants here. Because later on in the game, when you're having to manage this entire world, it understandably becomes quite complex. Because you have to do a lot of micromanaging, and you're just bouncing your guys all over the place, and they're really slow, so yeah, it's pretty important to pay attention to stuff like that. Alright, of course, I've got the symbiosis here because I'm next to a dandelion. So we're all symbiotic, we're all happy. There is nothing to complain about here. But we are still a little shy on the research. So a good way to get research, aside from making dandelion plants, is to use our rock giant. Now, the rock giant can make mineral patches. There's something called precious minerals and advanced minerals. The precious minerals will give you gold, and the advanced minerals will give you research. So for this thing that we're going to need, we're going to go ahead and do the one that gives us the research, which is the advanced. Bam. And there you have it. And since I was able to create a stone mineral here next to my school, that kind of increased the school's specialization, which is something like a synergy I keep saying synergy, but I mean symbiosis. It's kind of like a symbiosis for humans, so to speak. So here we have wealth and tech because I've got a mineral within the school's borders. So that really increased my research capabilities. So that's kind of how that works. So it also synergizes with people as well, which is cool. So you really have to pay attention and pause very often to just look at all of your tiles to see what the most optimum thing to do for the game is. I'm one of those people who really likes to maximize things and to make things the most ideal as possible. I'm just kind of like that min-max mindset. And this is a great game for people with that kind of mindset, really. So that's something to keep in mind if you like to kind of fiddle with things to make the most out of them. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to enhance something that I've already made. Now, this may not be the best idea because you can change things sometimes to a state to where they're not symbiotic anymore, if you know what I mean. So say I were to enhance this blueberry bush here with something with an ability that my forest giant has called leaf aspect. It will upgrade a plant and give it more technology and nature, which is another thing of this game. Nature basically, I believe, increases the quality of the land, but I'm not quite sure. There are several things in this game that I'm not completely sure on, but let's go ahead and add a leaf aspect and see what happens here. All right, so as you can see, it added to the technology. It gave me 4, where before it had none, and it gave me Natura. Here we go. Here's a good explanation. Natura can create great bonuses with synergies. It does not stack with Natura from other sources. However, it influences all patches in range, but the value on the patch is the highest of the influences. So basically what it does is increases the synergy with other things that we have. Alright, now that I have given it a leaf aspect, as you can see here, it shows you the aspects that you have. I can now potentially turn it into a strawberry. I can transmute it into a strawberry bush. But, you know, I really don't want to do that. You know why? Because that would mess up my... Would it mess up my symbiosis? I don't think it would, because I'm still next to a dandelion. So let's go and try this, guys. Let's go ahead and transmute it. So it's producing 19 food and 4 technology at the moment. Let's see what happens when I do it. All right, so it jumped down to 9. So there was something there that it did not like. So, okay. This is where the experimentation comes in, and it's really important to play around in the sandbox mode to kind of get an idea of what that involves. You can undo things. There's not like a specific key that lets you undo an action, but if you use logic, you can basically just say plant another plant over the one that you just made and basically correct it to where it was again. So if you find that you make a mistake like that, it's not impossible to correct that. All right, so let's go back to our school. As you can see, the project finished. And we now have an ambassador who is looking very charming in his bear-skinned cloak. Very charming indeed. All right, so this forest ambassador is a gift from the villagers for helping them create the item that they wanted. And what he does, as I mentioned earlier, is he will unlock certain skills for your giants. And this is up to you in which direction you can go. So because it unlocks different abilities, of course, because these giants don't all have the same abilities, right? So you can see when you hover over him what ability he will unlock for what giant. For instance, clicking on my Earth Giant here and hovering over the ambassador, it shows me that I'll unlock the exotic aspect, which essentially I can upgrade an animal to make it more exotic, which will then allow me to create and generate more wealth. So that's an option. Alright, so with my ocean giant, I can unlock a crystal aspect, which will take a mineral that I have mined and make it more to generate even more wealth. So say if my rock giant were to create one of these precious minerals, which I may do here shortly, I could then potentially use this ability here to make that mine produce even more wealth for me, if you're following me here. All right, for the swamp beast, this will unleash a reaction aspect which upgrades minerals. So this kind of works in the same way as the water demigod does, in that I can upgrade one of my research mines instead of one of my wealth mines to basically generate even more research. And for my forest, it will upgrade a plant with a fruit aspect, so I can make a fruit tree. And I think that's what I'm going to do here, because I want to experiment and maybe make an apple tree here and see what happens. So let's go ahead and right-click on him. And once you right-click on him, you basically become one with him. He rides atop your head, and you now have a new ability. So let me go ahead and use my passive fertilizer. Well, it's actually an active ability, but it's going to basically increase the quality of my soil here real quick. It's on a long cooldown, but it will increase your soil quality, so it's always nice to do whenever the cooldown's done. Anyway, let's experiment by making this a fruit aspect. So let's replant this, and let's give it a fruit aspect and see what happens. Alright, you see that increased my food quantity by quite a bit. It gave quite a bit of a jump here. But that also allowed me to transmute it into an apple tree, which gives food if they're close to animals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can maybe make a domestic animal here. Even though mackerel don't eat apples, I'm going to see if the game will let me do this. So let's try this out. Alright, that increased that. And let's increase. Alright, so that took me down by 1 point, which isn't bad, because what I can do now is I can give it another aspect, which will give me more food out of it, so that'll take it back up. So that was not a loss at all in what I just did there, because that bumped me up to 30 by doing that, which is really cool. So it's cool to just kind of experiment with things like that and see, of course, it didn't affect any of these things in the process, which is nice. Now, say I want to upgrade my dandelion. I could, but let's see, can I do it if I give it a leaf aspect? Let's see what happens. Alright, I wasn't able to transmute it, but I was able to increase my research out of it. Now you'll see here, I could transmute it into a nightshade if I had a lesser toxic aspect, but that's currently locked because I didn't get an ambassador on my swamp beast here. Alright, let's click on the village and see how they're doing. It looks to me like they're starting to get greedy, because they really, essentially what greedy is they don't have any dangers, and they just think they can essentially do whatever they want because they're in such a peaceful society. So we can kind of control that to an extent, but we cannot directly control it. So to kind of mess with that figure a little bit, let's kind of create some danger for them by putting some exotic animals out here. Actually, let me put some exotic animals here instead, because I've got plans for this node. Which I think that reaches their borders, perhaps. Alright. I'm not quite sure that gave me any danger rating as of yet, because I don't think I have it unlocked to where I can do that. Let's see. Okay, no, I don't. So that's unfortunate. Okay, well, never mind. It seems like I don't think I'm going to be able to reign in this village very handily. But that's okay. There aren't really any other villages that they can get too greedy with at the moment. Greed's really not much of an issue in my experience until there are other villages, and then they'll try to like basically conquer those villages. Right now I was working on this right side earlier, and what I want to do is I want to create a symbiosis here with this mine by making a stone garden. So I'm going to have to make it next to a plant. So I think I need more technology, because I'm doing all right on my food since I've got this apple tree over here. So what I want to do is I want to make an herb, and I'll place it down here to give that symbiosis with my stone garden. So as you can see, the symbiosis is there now. Pretty cool, right? Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a leaf aspect to essentially increase my technology even more here. It's always good. Always a good thing to do. And as I mentioned before, it doesn't really let me make nightshade yet, simply because I don't have the thing there. Alright. So we've got a bit of symbiosis going along. I think what I'm going to do is I might get rid of this animal node for the time being, since I determined that it wouldn't really do me any good. And I think I'm going to actually try to tap into the symbiotic relationship of plants like I did over here, and get myself some more research. So let's wait for the research to cool down. Now I am taking this game at a very slow pace intentionally. Like normally I'd have several colonies by now, but I really want to take time to explain this game because there's so much to go into here. So let's go ahead and make an herb patch here and kind of erase over my stoat thing. And that should create some symbiosis, as you can see. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and can I make it grow? Let's go ahead and make it grow. Let's experiment with it a little bit. Give it a growth aspect and see what happens. I believe that's just going to make it generate food, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. That will generate food and allow me to transform it into a strawberry plant, which actually is something that I want to do, because that's going to basically keep my villagers from attacking my harmless rock giant bad villagers. Because since it increases my awe, that should help the village kind of rein in a little bit. Attacking my rock giant. How dare you? I think... How can I... I'll just move them away. That should be fine. Bad village. The village demands the giants give them more. Well, guys. Sorry, but it doesn't always happen the way you want it to. Alright, so I think they're doing okay as far as food and research is concerned. I'm more concerned with the awe, which is -10. So I think what I want to do at this point is maybe just even get rid of this dandelion and maybe just make another like strawberry bush here. So to do that, I'm gonna make an herb. Gonna kind of take it back a notch, right? And then we're going to let's go ahead and fertilize it since our fertilizer's off cooldown. All right, now let's give it a. Where's my growth aspect? There we go. All right, let's give it a growth aspect to turn it into a strawberry bush. There we go. Let's go ahead and transmute that. All right, and that should have, yes, that decreased the awe of the village a little bit, which they're still kind of greedy, so I still kind of need to keep these guys in control. And I think what I'm going to do that is use another feature that this game has that the giants possess, which is to attack things. Now, I've been very passive with my giants thus far, but, you know, these guys are getting unruly, so I think I'm going to use one of my giant special abilities. Now, at the beginning, only certain giants' abilities are unlocked at the beginning, namely the rock giant and the swamp giant. And I believe that's it. Well, I guess yeah, that's it. As far as like the attack abilities go anyway. Let me be more specific. So, let's use the Swamp Giant's attack ability called Muck Bomb, which should keep these guys under control because it deals damage to targets. So, I see some targets here moving around in their cute little way. So let's go ahead and put a Muck Bomb on them. Kind of keep them under control. Alright, as you can see, that pretty much took care of them. Now they're trying to attack my Ocean Giant. Well, that's not very nice of you guys. Alright, they're growing increasingly unhappy. So, I think I'm going to... Well, I can't do too much, really, at this point. As you can see, I do have a health bar. I forgot to mention that earlier. And they have been attacking me a little bit. So, it's important to pay attention to your health. But I'm really not in any extreme danger or anything like that. So I don't have to worry too much about that. I think what I probably should have done... is I think what I'm going to do, because this school basically creates negative 10 awe, which is basically what's like creating these problems. I think I'm going to get rid of this quarry, which will kind of de-aggro my school, I should say, a little bit. So let's go ahead and put a plant down, a fruit plant, where this quarry was, and see if maybe we can change things up a little bit. Alright, as you can see, by creating that plant, I essentially made their awe at 0, which is going to help me out quite a bit, because what I'm going to do now is turn it into a strawberry by giving it a leaf aspect, so I can maybe increase the awe a little bit more here. There we go. And let's give it a little more technology, why not? And I'm going to go ahead and throw another Muck Bomb at these guys, just to kind of take down their army so they don't attack me. There we go. Move him out of the way. Alright. I think that kind of got them under control. They're still quite unruly, but as you can see, their greed is going down. So if I throw another Muck Bomb at them, I think that'll take care of of them for the most part. And there we go. And as you can see, Wardom has been punished into humility. So essentially what I did there is I was able to attack them so much that they just gave up and they're like, okay, you win, basically. But I'm still generating negative 10 awe because I destroyed, my muck bomb essentially destroyed quite a few of these patches of land. So I kind of need to rebuild a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's give it a leaf aspect. Let's make this village nice, happy, and prosperous again. Let's see, was leaf aspect not what I needed to do? I can't remember. You do have to follow a certain order. There's a wiki on this game, which really helps you out if you kind of want to get a better understanding, and I do recommend checking it out. There's actually a direct link to the wiki from the game itself, which is kind of cool. Alright, so that will help out a little bit. So that's something I do recommend you do. You can probably imagine that later on in the game it gets quite complex. But you know, I do find this game to be very interesting because it's so simple on the surface, yet so deep once you really get into things. Like, I've sat here and talked to you for several minutes now, but, you know, really, I haven't even scratched the surface on all the game's mechanics, because there are a bunch. You have to... there are just so many that that we didn't even get into, but that kind of does give you an idea of what one civilization is like to manage. But you can manage several civilizations. I mean, you can have this whole globe like littered with civilizations that you're trying to manage, and they'll fight each other, they'll duke it out, they'll get angry with you, as you saw, try to kill you. And in the meantime, you really don't have any direct control over them. You really just kind of have to do what is in your power as a terraformer and what is in your power as a giant to quell them, to pacify them. So, yeah. And I really didn't allow this village to grow much, but I could have done a whole lot more, and I probably would have made this village more happy. The reason they weren't that happy was probably because I was going at a really slow pace. And I know some of you are probably going to facepalm because of that, but I feel like that was necessary to kind of get a grasp of what this game does offer you. So, and I mean, I didn't even like build on these other biomes really, because like all this stuff that I made, like these strawberry bushes, are completely different on different biomes. So, like, let's make an herb like we've made on these biomes. Let's make one here in the desert and see what happens. Let's see what we create. Alright, we've created a withered shrub, which in itself does literally nothing. It's basically just foliage. But what we can do with that withered shrub in a desert tile is we can maybe fertilize it a little bit, give it a fertility boost to increase the aspects, and then give it, say, a fruit aspect, which will in turn allow me to make an agave fruit because I gave it a fruit aspect, which then I could further transmute into a date palm. So you can see how things quickly just allow you to have so much fun, to experiment, to do really wacky, wild, crazy things, and it's really quite amazing. And you know, say you don't like a village or something, you can get rid of them. It's not like once a human village has colonized an area that's it. You can't really change that. You do have control over it, and I'll show you one of the giant's abilities here called Earthquake. But you know, it's usually not in your best interest to not interfere, because once, as I mentioned earlier, once a village is created, they'll offer a challenge to you, and that challenge will allow you to get an ambassador. And the ambassadors are really what will allow you to progress through this game through creating more villages. You can see another guy here is trying to settle basically where I just destroyed. So I'm going to take him out of the picture too by making an ocean, because you can also make oceans and they will destroy settlements as well. So there are several ways where you can get rid of settlements if you want to, but in reality they will keep coming back unless you make like an inhospitable biome for them. In this case, I pretty much did there. And in making an ocean, I transformed this desert into forest, which essentially got rid of my agave plant, so that was kind of unfortunate. But say we want to make a mountain here, though. Let's go ahead and make a mountain and see how that kind of transforms things real quick. I guarantee you I'll take and get rid of this barren spot. And we've got desert and mountain areas now. So there's another biome for you, mountainous. I mean, this game's got a lot, guys. It has a lot. So there you have it. Reus, ladies and gentlemen. I definitely recommend you pick this game up for its aesthetic art style, its very calming nature, and its depth of play with, even though that there's like, it seems very basic on the surface. All those reasons are valid for picking up this game. So that'll be my showcase. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.